good? All right. Good evening. We'll call the Planning Commission for Wednesday, September 28th to order. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mr. Naco.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Greenberg.
Here.
Hicks.
Here.
Mako.
Here.
Chapekas absent. Soriano.
Here.
Tamarkin.
Here.
Wester.
Here.
Next, we have additions and corrections to the agenda. I have none. Approval of minutes. The minutes from August 24th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved by Hicks.
Motion by Mr. Hicks. Do I have a second?
Second, Soriano.
Second by Mr. Soriano. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Hicks.
Yes.
Soriano.
Yes.
Greenberg.
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
Wester.
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next, we'll turn it over to Mr. Roth, Assistant City Attorney, to swear in our speakers tonight, our applicants.
We are now at the public hearing portion of the meeting. The public hearing will operate as follows. Administrative staff will make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant or their representative may then make a presentation or comment on the application. Public comment will then be open for 3 minutes allowed per speaker. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Speakers must complete a speaker slip and come to the podium and state their name. The applicant will then be given 10 minutes to comment. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. If there is more than one application pending for a particular address, the presentation on each application may be consolidated and presented as one. At this time, will persons wishing to present testimony this evening please rise and raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, state I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. All right, we'll move right into our applications. I'll read them into the record, and then we'll turn them over to the city for a presentation. So first we have DR 00152022 to consider a design review application for a site plan, landscaping, and building design for property located at 1600 Eastgate Parkway. Parcel ID 025-001138, current zoning OCT, Columbia Gas Training, Weld Shop, Katie Bauman applicant, and FDP-00062022 to consider a final development plan application for property located at 1600 Eastgate Parkway, parcel ID 026001138, current zoning OCT, Columbia Gas Training, Weld Shop, Katie Bauman applicant. Mr. Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the screen right now, we have the location and zoning map. The property is in our industrial area. It's zoned OCT, which is Office, Commerce, and Technology. Fronts on Eastgate Parkway. There's been a couple of projects in this area over the last year or two. We don't get too much action on Eastgate, but over here on Deffenbaugh and Taylor Road, we've had a couple of different industrial projects. So again, this is in the far eastern portion of the city. Two applications before you tonight, final development plan design review. The request is fairly straightforward. It's for a weld shop at the Columbia Gas Training Facility. This is an existing facility. It's 6,600 square feet, one-story building, 24 and a half feet in height. Materials, and we have some renderings in the packet. I also have an image of the street view to show you. White siding, natural stone brick, light gray steel roof. This is really consistent with the buildings that are out there. In this particular building where it's situated, it's really not visible from the roadway, but it is consistent with the development out there. There are also 10 additional parking spaces associated with this. Office, Commerce, Technology, the zoning does allow for this use. The land use plan is industrial research and innovation. The types of uses are industrial manufacturing technology that the land use plan calls for. So this use is a allowed use within the land use designation. Here is their site plan towards the bottom of the screen here. This is Eastgate Parkway. So if you were to go out here, it's a huge separation, and I don't have it in front of me just how far set back these buildings are, but there's only a portion of the building, the southern portion, the end here, that's visible from the roadway. There's a detention area here and some parking, but I think the setback is actually a couple hundred feet. This is set back pretty far. Not really visible. Close up here of the parking, top of your screen now is east, and to the left is north, but this is the building. It's right adjacent to a building, and here are these 10 additional parking spaces. Some images, some renderings of the building here. Again, it's 6,600 square feet. What you see here is pretty consistent with what was previously constructed. Here is a Google Street View image. This is the existing building. This is zoomed in as far as it'll go on the software. It is set back quite a bit. And here we go. And off to the left here side of the screen is where that new building would be located. The design review criteria, there's 4 general criterion to consider. Is the proposed structure compatible with existing structures? Does it contribute to the improvement of the design of the district? Does it contribute to the economic vitality of the district? Does it enhance the physical surroundings? Certainly in staff's opinion, the request meets the criteria for approval. It's very similar in appearance and materials, and it's a consistent use with the existing training facility. Final development plan, 4 criteria as well to consider. Plan meets applicable development standards. Yes, it does. It's actually not often I can say that. We do not have a variance application tonight, so that's very exciting. So it does meet the strict requirements of the code. Is it in accord with the appropriate plans in the area? Again, land use plan, industrial. This is an industrial use. Would it have undesirable effects on the area? Is it consistent with the land use character and development of the area? Again, there's several buildings out there. This is just an accessory building to what's building off of what's already out there on this site, which is a training facility. So again, staff recommends approval. We find it consistent with the various code requirements and some of the recommendations of the land use plan. There's actually no variances with this, which is great. I can tell you our next agenda, there will be variances, so it's nice not to have those tonight. Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blackford. Would the applicant like to speak? Any comments? Nothing to add. We'll close the public portion of the meeting and turn it over to the committee for questions. One to my left. Mr. Greenberg.
I'll have
One to my right.
I guess question for the applicant on the detention pond, is this building add any additional flow to the detention pond where it will cause any problems?
And if you don't mind, can you just come up here to speak, because we do broadcast these, and we need you in the microphone to pick it up on the...
No, this site was actually master planned to include this as a portion of the future. So the only thing we will be doing to the detention basin is actually changing an orifice size. That is all.
Thank you.
And that will bring it up to current day standards.
Great.
Okay. Seeing no other questions from the committee, we'll close the portion of the meeting, and do I have a motion for approval?
Mr. Chair, I move the approval of item DR-0015-2022.
I have a motion by Mr. Hicks. Do I have a second?
Second, Greenberg.
Second by Mr. Greenberg. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Hicks,
Yes.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Siriano,
Yes.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Wester,
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Motion carries. Now for the final development plan. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move the approval of item FDP-0006-2022.
I have a Mr. Hicks. Do I have a second?
Second, Wester.
Second by Mr. Wester. Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Hicks,
Yes.
Wester,
Yes.
Siriano,
Yes.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Greenberg.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much. I wish they were all this easy, and we look forward to having this here. I was at the grand opening of the original Columbia Gas facility in my former capacity as chairman of the Visitors Bureau, and I think it's a very nice project, very nice facility for Gahanna, and we're glad to have you here, and good luck with the add-on, and hopefully it brings more visitors and more people into our community. Thank you. Have a good evening. All right, we will move on to unfinished business. We have none. New business, we have none. Official reports, city attorney,
Nothing to report at this time, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Roth. Director of Planning, Mr. Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for our next agenda, I think at this point, we might have 3 variances, and I think they're all residential variances. And I don't know if we'll have another like design review or something, but it should be a fairly light agenda, but a little bit more beefy than tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. And city council report.
I was trying to figure out when the last time we met was to give a couple of updates, and we may have talked about this a little bit, but I'll share it again, get it on the record. The rezoning that went before Planning Commission, the Morse Road multifamily rezoning request, that was before City Council this week with a committee meeting, a public hearing, and a vote is anticipated October 17th. So that'll be forthcoming here shortly. And what I couldn't remember is if since we met last regarding the city facilities discussion, 825 Tech Center, and the city was pursuing that facility. That was green lighted by City Council. So we are in a due diligence period right now. So we are moving forward at this time with 825 Tech Center for multiple city facilities. That's exciting stuff. That's all I have for this evening. Thank you, sir.
All right, very good. For the chair, I brought up earlier, I'd like to just have a brief discussion of how we handle variances when there are multiple variances in one vote. When one member of the commission is opposed to just one variance in a bundle of variances, should we automatically break it out? Should we have a discussion about breaking it out? Should we have a separate vote on the variances? So Mr. Hicks brought one up at the residential apartment building. He was opposed to the timeline. They were asking for a variance, if my memory serves me correctly, to extend beyond 1 year the time frame when the variance would stay in force. And he says, no, I think, if it's been a year and nothing's happened, maybe you should come back in front of us again. Mr. Shapaka was opposed to another variance on something, and then we voted at the whole bunch, and they all got passed. Ask Mr. Roth to give a comment. Mr. Hicks has an opinion, I think, on it. And gentlemen, anyone else?
Yeah, there's nothing specifically in our rules of procedure about this that may be something we look into doing in the future. I don't think there's anything that would prohibit stopping the meeting, seeing if, a majority of the commission wants to split it into separate votes. I think it would be prudent to do so, just so it's clear that there is support for these. There is not, there is a no vote for one of them out of 3 or whatever. So I think, yeah, if the chair sees that happening, stop the meeting, ask, at that point, if the panel would like to do it. I don't know if you have to do that by formal motion, to split them out from the agenda. They're only bunched together on the agenda because of the chairman and the clerk, set it up that way. So I would imagine we can split it out if you want to. So that would be my opinion, is just stop the meeting and ask, and if the majority want to do it, it would, I think, be wise to hold separate votes.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would, what Mr. Roth had laid out is how we have handled it in the past. There was always a discussion on, are you amending one of the items, and does that require a vote? We haven't done it that way. It's been at the discretion of the chair. And like Mr. Roth said, just a straw poll of the commission members and kind of gauging the temperature. And I think I had mentioned to you earlier, if it's just one commission member that has an issue or wanted it, probably not prudent to split it out, just to satisfy one. But again, it's the discretion of the chair and the will of the commission.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wester?
Yeah, I think I'm in favor of having variance listed individually as individual items on the agenda. We've broken out in the past where you have to look at the sequence of what the variances are. And if one variance doesn't pass, the project can die. I think the people that, the applicants, I don't know who their counsel is, who helps them prepare their applications. I think when we lump them all together, 2 or 3 in one situation, you can lose the importance or the significance of 1 or 2 of them. You could lose conversation, debate on one of those variances that could be condemning to the project. Sometimes I've wondered if they don't get lumped together to camouflage that one. So for me, I'm of the opinion that each variance should stand before us as its own individual. And I think that goes back to the rules of procedure. I think, somebody refresh my memory, come about the first of the year, those come before us for revision. Former clerks have asked us, or we've had discussion on should we change those rules of procedure. This might be something that we want to consider. Otherwise, it could come before us and could become a long debate point that maybe rest with the commission or with the chair. And if they were broken up, that situation may not occur.
Soriano?
I was just going to add, like Mr. Wester, for cleanliness and expediency, I think breaking them out on the agenda, was actually going to mention the same. I think, at max, what have we seen? It may be 5, if that on an agenda lumped together, and normally that's not the case. So I don't think it adds any extra time. It's going to be marginal at best. But I think what it does is it keeps the commission, it keeps it more tidy in terms of rules of order and appropriateness than having to do it on the fly in the meeting, and then giving any. I think it's a lot cleaner that way. So I would be in support of breaking it out on each variance out on the agenda as another rule of order, or as a matter of course with rules of order. So.
Okay, and I kind of agree with that also. So if that is something we want to do, what would the process be? Should we ask opinion on that?
Have something to say, but then I'll have something after.
Yep.
Right, I'm also of the opinion that I think this is a good course of action. In my professional experience, whenever we have this comes up a lot with our subdivision reviews, where we have, let's say, a preliminary plan in front of us, and there are 2 or 3 variances that go along with that, and we always We always have a separate motion, a separate vote on those variances, and then, if we're approving the preliminary plan, we'll vote on that. So I think separating these things out is, again, a prudent course of action.
I do have one question. Procedurally, one variance gets, 3 out of 4 variances get approved, one does not. In terms of an applicant's recourse, are they able to amend that and bring it back in front of commission a month later? What's the turnaround on something like that? Do you know, Mr. Blackford?
The code does have language on variances and when you can resubmit. But the way that the code reads, because this came up maybe like 6 months ago, I think in a similar discussion, and the way it reads is you can't file like the identical application, which chances are there's going to be something different to it. So yes, they could refile something if, one of those variances was shot down.
Yep.
They can come back and refile something different.
Sure. I think about turnaround times for applicants, and if, a project is going to completely die because one variance is not approved, it probably doesn't make any sense to do this. But if there is, recourse for the applicant, they can make an amendment in a timely fashion, resubmit it, and, with the adjustments that would make sense, I think, because they would be targeted then.
I wouldn't be opposed if we, had this suggested edit to the rules of procedure, but generally speaking, rules should be for the norm, not the exception. And if I think back over the last 6 years, less than 5 times has this become an issue. So we have a means to address it, which is what we discussed earlier. Again, I wouldn't be opposed to listing things out separately, but just thinking about how frequent or how infrequently we've ever had a discussion around it, we might be creating a solution to the problem that we don't have.
I hear what Mr. Hicks is saying, but going back to what Mr. Ross said, I don't know that it's been formalized and in our rules of procedure. We're drawing on memory here. I just heard 6 years. I got a couple more than that. By that, how do we capture history in writing so that when it comes up, somebody can go back to the rules and read it? We've referenced Robert's rules in the past, and the only thing I think it should be memorialized, and so that we know what we want to do when it comes up, whether it stays here with the chair to break it out in front of the people, or if it starts back at the application submitted to the city. And that way, I think there's a transparency with that the applicant won't get blindsided when it comes in front of us. That if somebody here is going to object to it, we break it out because that one's going to kill this project. I think, again, like I said, transparency. Let people see what we're doing and how we operate.
I think the other thing it does is it forces the applicant to speak to each variance. Kind of do either the applicant or Mr. Blackford to do a little bit of a presentation on each and every variance individually.
Every presentation has always covered every single variance,
Right.
and every staff report does. Yeah. So it's already covered, whether you
On your
break it
end.
out or not. Not for me to decide how you
No,
guys
but
run it.
we would love your opinion.
I guess however you want to do it. I think like it becomes clear when you break it out. I kind of would probably side with Mr. Hicks and how he's looking at things. It only happens once in a while, but if there's nothing preventing you from doing it at that meeting, because there is some level of heightened, you want to look at it, but whether you break it out or not, if you don't approve the application, if you don't approve a variance, that affects their project. So I think ultimately, applicants, they're going to have to make changes based off of your vote, however you want to do it. So I think it's really a preference. The only concern I would have, and I haven't heard this, and no offense, I don't think y'all have this kind of authority, but we only require one application. Like, we cannot require 5 separate variance applications for one project. That's not going to happen. That would be too, there'd be a lot of pushback, and it probably wouldn't have a lot of value. But how you break it up on an agenda, I would say that's totally between you and the clerk. I don't see a lot of negatives, but again, I kind of would see Mr. Hicks where maybe it's a solution to a problem that only comes up maybe once a year and that. But I don't have a problem. What I would say from the clerk and myself, working with a few different clerks and with Pam, we don't have an issue with, tracking what's approved, what's not. So that's good. So however you want to do it, we'll be able to track what's approved, what's not. It's just really, I think, a preference of Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We gonna agree on something and table it for first of the year for review of the rules?
Mr. Chair, I guess a question. Does not the chair have the discretion at this point in time to break apart the variances if they're grouped together? You could do that at the beginning of the meeting. You could also do it, as we often do here. We'll say, hey, I'm opposed to this variance, and that's before the vote. So you would have a heads up.
And then you would know to break it
And
out,
then you'll know to break it out.
or survey the committee
Right.
or other committee.
Right, at least now until the beginning of the year when we can review these rules. And I just took a look at all our rules, and they probably do need a little bit of updating, including taking me off the chair of the Planning Commission. It's on the website. At least what I pulled up.
Mr. Chair, if I just may add one thing real quick, and I would say there is precedent for what you all are talking about, and that's specifically, I think it was, the last time we saw this was maybe December of last year with the multifamily project, that there was the variance to have the fees in lieu. There are some variances that go on to city council. I think every time we've had one of those variances, it's been lumped in with non-city council variances. So those have been broken out separately on an application. From my standpoint, the applicant's standpoint, it's still one variance application, but from a planning commission agenda, that was broken out separately, and I think that's worked really well. Now, a little bit different because, you don't approve certain variances. They're few and far between, but again, there is some precedent for what you all are talking about, where, again, the agenda was broken out separately for those variances.
And the chair also approves the agenda the
Yes.
week before the meeting. So we can always, if I see something that might need a little more discussion, we can break them out just for that agenda item. Okay. Food for thought. Mr. Hicks, any CIC comments?
Nothing to report at this time.
All right. With that, we have no correspondence and actions. Any comments from the commission? Mr. Hicks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if the rest of the commission members are thrown off like I was, but normally during the assistant city attorney comments, he gives a wife joke, and we don't have one tonight. So, what changed? What changed? Welcome to Mrs. Roth.
Good to have you.
No further comments here.
Thank you. Any comments?
No comments.
No comments. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Adjournment by Mr. Wester. In record time.